Of the serverless programming is to deliver more value to the core of your business and manage and minimizing the time and resources you spend on the infrastructure related requirements. Use fully managed end-to-end serverless solution provided by Azure to boost your development productivity. It comes with all the features such as CI/CD, supported to different languages, framework, and all those things. So let's look at some of the serverless component which comes with Azure and which can be a value addition to your business. Hi, my name is Rakesh Suryavanshi. I'm your host for this video. Let's begin the serverless programming with Azure. First of all, Azure Function. Azure Function is a very powerful tool. It gives the ability to write your own code, a small functionality or small unit of code which you want to execute from your web application, which is not part of your application, basically web application. Think of Azure Function as a web job which you use to use it with the app services. Though the web job are still supported, but may not be possible in future as Microsoft is planning to get rid of web job very soon. So Azure Function is going to be your friend of performing all those background activities. Azure Function provides a variety of options to create an event-driven business solution, such as in with the help of Azure Functions, you would be able to write an event-driven Azure function which can perform an action based on a blob storage event, HTTP event, a request event, or service bus queue messages, storage queue messages, event hub, event grid, and all those different types of event. You can leverage the Azure function. I have already created a video how do you create Azure function and manage your Azure function code with Visual Studio Code. I would recommend you to go through that particular topic. Next is Logicapps. Logicapps provides an integrated platform for your application wherein you should be able to schedule, automate, and orchestrate different tasks for your business process. It helps to create a workflow when you need to integrate app, data, system, and services across your enterprise or the organization. Logicapp simplifies how design how you design, build scalable solution for your integration app. Data integration, system integration, and enterprise application integration, and a business to business communication, whether cloud or on premise. It helps you to provide a solution for variety of business problems related to the integration workflow. Think Logicapp as in bespoke integration solution which you might have for your enterprise applications. Logicapp is now also being used as Azure Scheduler, as the scheduler is already been deprecated. Next services comes as an event grid. Event grid is again a serverless service. You don't need to worry about the servers. Event grid allows you to easily build the application with event-based architecture. First, select the resource you would like to subscribe to and then give the event handle to the webhook event to send the event. Next event has a built-in support for the event coming to the Azure services like blob storage, resource group, and so many others. Here is a list of events which you can use in the event grid as an event source. It has a a wide range of lists, such as in blob storage, resource group, Azure subscription, Event Hub, IoT, Service Bus, Map, Signal Service, Machine Learning, and so on, which we might look at in some of our future videos based on the different problem statement. Event group, event grid also handles the event with the different event handlers, such as in Azure Function. As I mentioned, you can create an Azure function with a type of event grid. So whenever an event is being published by Azure Function by the event grid, you can receive that particular event at the Azure function level. Or the otherwise, let's say I have a HTTP function type of function, and from there, if I'm receiving the HTTP request and I want to forward the HTTP function request with some data calculation to the event grid so that it can be tackled by some other services. So it is possible to send an event from the Azure function to the event grid, which would be taken care by some other services such as in logicapp, or it may be some other services. We'll discuss that in, in some of our detailed discussion. As you can see, the handlers are Azure Function, workflow integrations such as in logicapp, service bus, event hubs, storage queues, hybrid connection. Webhook is one of the most important and well used application handler to handle the Azure events in the event grid. Event grid, the common scenario for the serverless application with the use of event grid is listed here. First one is, let's say someone is uploading these files onto the storage account. Let's say I have a web application to register an employee. I'm registering an employee, uploading its photo, which could be high resolution photo, onto the blob storage. Then once a record is added to the blob storage, a event going to be gets published, and event will listen to the entry into the blob storage, and it will send a notification to Azure function. And within the Azure function, I can define a logic to, let's say, create a thumbnail from the high resolution image, and that thumbnail can be used within the application when it gets displayed to some of the other pages. So that could be one of the example which is given in the Microsoft website, which we can leverage with the use of all three programming services such as an Azure Function, storage account, event grid, and so on. So there could be a variety of scenarios wherein you can implement the combination of these serverless technologies such as an event grid, Azure Function, logicapp, or any of the server technologies as well. We'll go through some of the serverless approaches in this particular session, and we'll see how do you implement all of these in the different use cases. We'll try to cover few of them, and then based on that you'll get some idea how do you use either of the technology based on your business needs. Let's go to the demonstration now. I'm on my Azure portal, and now we are going to create a system generated event, and for that let's create a logicapp. So what I'm going to do is, with the help of logicapp, I'm going to read an event into the storage account from the storage account basically. So let's call the lab01 for now, and then once I create a logicapp, it should be instantly available. Meanwhile the logicapp is getting created, I'll create the storage account as well. You can see the storage logicapp is already created. Before I move on to the demonstration, let's look at some of the common feature about the logicapp which we have created, and we'll see what all things it gets because this is the first time we are discussing about the logicapp, it's worth spending some time and looking at some of the core feature which is available for the logicapp. Let's move on. I have my logicapp here in the demonstration. You can see there are different types of triggers available which you can use it. You can create your own templates, which we are going to do it now, and there are hundreds of different options which are available, which you can use for your defining your own workflow. As I mentioned, it is an integration platform which you can use to define your own your own set of workflow. And the good thing about all these serverless programming tools is you don't need to pay for anything for the infrastructure or for the services itself. You only get paid when the services are going to be run. For example, let's say if I'm running the logicapp 10,000 times a day or 100,000 times a month, then I may get just charged for a few dollars, a dollar or two, for an entire month of duration. So if you are performing such a powerful work on with the help of logicapp servers, Azure Functions and eventgrid, then it is going to be a huge value addition considering the amount of price they are charging for the for this kind of workflows and in the services. So let's create a blank logicapp for now. What we are going to do is we are going to search for event. So I'm going to search for event grid, and then I'm going to search when a resource event occurs. So whenever an event is going to occur, we are going to receive that particular event here. So here what you can do is, for the demonstration, I can go ahead and use my own credentials to log on to the eventgrid subscription. If you have the service principal created, you can use the service principal. Obviously in the production it is recommended to use the service principal. So for now, for this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my personal credential. As you can see, I've successfully connected to my event subscription. So what exactly it is going to do is it's going to create a event subscription for me, and then it will also create one event topic which is of type blob storage. So here I'm selecting the type of topic which I want to select. As you can see, there are a number of options for resource type or the type of topics which I'm going to create, so you can choose either of them. So at the moment I'm going to choose storage account, and then let's select the computing as well. That's it. So this is what we are doing it here. So what we are saying here, whenever a resource event occurs onto the storage account, this particular storage account, this logicapp will listens to that event. Let's see now if we have anything listed down here. Nothing, because there is no event occurs. So let me see if I'm able to duplicate this page, and then I'll try to open this storage account. So let's upload a file. I'm going to upload one of my thumbnail. So as you can see, I have the file successfully uploaded. Now I'm expecting an event to be triggered here. Let's see if at all it has got an event. Yeah, you can see there is an event captured by the logicapp. So I've sent the event to by adding a file to the storage account, and then once the storage account has received a file, the event grid has listens to the subscriber which in this case is the logicapp. So this is what the flow is. Now let's look at some of the other example of serverless programming. I'm going to create an event grid topic, and you can see the icon is a bit different. So here I'm going to select my resource group name, and then I'm going to call serverless computing. So I'm going to choose the location by default. Let's create another demonstration about this event grid. I'm going to create one more logicapp. Let's call event source lab 01. This time from the designer, I am going to go ahead and select the HTTP type of trigger. Before I do that, I would like to show you the number of connectors available, the different type of connector which are available to use in the logicapp. You can have the scheduler type of connector. As I mentioned in my previous section, that logicapp is going to be replaced by schedulers. So if you want to implement a scheduler logic, then this is the kind of scenario you can use, kind of a connector you can use to implement. Like you have eventgrid, Azure Queue, OneDrive, RSS, and then many more open and third-party application which you can use it as a connector. If you want, you can create graph queries to create an Active Directory user. You can send an email, you can receive the event or send the information to Azure Data Factory, Data Lake, IoT devices. You can receive an event from the resource group manager, add any tags or anything like that. You can receive the notification and send the notification events to the machines, virtual machines, and other things. So there are more than 200 type of connector which are available, and which is really useful for your business, which you can use and create the integration with the help of logicapp. So and the things and the list is keep on growing time by time. So by the time you're watching the video, it may extend to 1,000 or 10,000. So let's get back to the demonstration and create a HTTP type of connector. So I'm going to use the HTTP connector. I'm going to choose an action. So for that, this time I want to publish an event to the event grid. So I'm going to choose publish an event. Once you choose, first of all, it is going to create a connector. So I'm going to give the name as an event source connector. Next, it is asking for the event grid information. So I'm going to provide the event grid information here. And then next it is asking for the access key, which you can find it on the event grid topic. So once you provide the information like event topic endpoint, access key signature, then you should be able to create a connector for your logicapp. I'll show you where exactly you will get the connector information. Now it is asking for the next information about the event grid. So these are the basic schema information which you need to pass. I'm going to call the subject as an source to topic. Let's see, copy that. I'm going to use as is data. Let's call it as in data as id. Here I have provided the information about the logicapp which it needs to send to the event grid. Let's test now. And here is the connector which I've created, which you can find it here. This is the name of connector which I have given, and then if you want to modify, you can modify the connection details here. So any type of connector you create, you will find the details of those connectors here. So it is possible that one logicapp, to define your workflow within one logicapp, you may have number of connector being used. For example, I might be using a connector to connect to the SQL database, to connector to Azure Data Factory, storage account, sending in message to email server, SendGrid, and all those things. So it might possible the entire workflow could be a very long and lengthy, and in that case it is possible that I might be using number of connectors. So all the connector details you will find it here in the API connections, which is good to know thing. Now next thing is, if you want, you can go ahead and check the designer and modify or make adjustment to the designer if you want, and take a backup of your logicapp. You can always go to the app logicapp code view, which is again a JSON representation of your designer. You can always go ahead, copy and paste it as is, and then move your logicapp logic from here to any other place. It just, you need to provide the connector details after you copy and paste the logicapp. So like once you copy the logic, it will create a connector, it will create a logicapp, but the inside the connectors you need to pass on the signature keys which is being used for the new connectors. So that kind of details. Another thing is, it shows the logicapp shows the information around the inbound and outbound IP addresses. For example, logicapp is going to be triggered or referred on the public endpoint. So by default it is accessible over the public endpoint, because the objective of the logicapp is to work as an integration platform, or event source, or even listener, subscriber. In that case, it is required to make it open on the public endpoint, and that's why you can see logicapp is getting hosted onto the Microsoft hosted range of IP addresses which are listed here. If you want to, let's say, connect to the storage account, for example, let's say my logicapp is logicapp required to connect to the storage account, but storage account itself is bound to not to allow to connection from any of the open internet. It is restricted to allow connection only for the selected range of IP addresses or some selected virtual network range. Then in that case, what I may want to do is, I may want to use the set of this IP address range and add it to my storage account, so that when my logicapp is going to connect to the storage account, then I should not have any issues connecting to the storage account from my logicapp, because by default, if you are not going to provide access from these listed IP addresses, in that case your storage account say, no, I won't allow you to connect it because you are unknown person for me, something like that. So you need to be very you need to be careful about that, and you should be aware about any such scenarios wherein you are trying to connect to the storage account which is kind of a blocked or having a restricted access due to some security reason. This is one of the case wherein you might want to use the logicapp to use some of its properties. Another thing is the access key. Now somebody may ask, why do we have the access keys in the logicapp? Because nobody calls logicapp, and why logicapps basically self-triggered kind of a service which triggers on a periodical basis, or which triggers based on some event. When some event occurs, then logicapp takes an action, kind of thing. So why do we need the access key? What would be the scenario to have the access key available in the logicapp? So Microsoft gives a possibility of scenario to use, wherein, let's say, you have an application requirement or a business scenario wherein you may want to invoke a logicapp based on some event to happen, a custom event. I'm not saying event means the event which logicapp can listen to, because if logicapp can listen to automatically, you don't need to do anything. But let's say there is a custom event. For example, there is a logic which I'm building. Let's say if the record name contains ABC and which has been inserted to some database which logicapp is not able to recognize through the event sourcing. So in that case, if I want to keep track of that particular custom event and I want to invoke a logicapp on a periodic basis on that particular custom event, then what I can do is I can use the access key and the logicapp URL which I have found in the property section, or you can find the or you can generate a logicapp. This logicapp URL, you can generate it with the help of access key and the combination of URL. You will get the encrypted URL, and with the use of that encrypted URL, what you can do is you can invoke HTTP endpoints and call the logicapp. Basically, this is one of the use case scenario which we have implemented in one of our practical implementation in with one of our client requirement. So I thought better to discuss with you. That could be one of the useful case in future for you. One more thing to remember. I know we are a little bit diverting from our demonstration, but while we are here in the logicapp, I just want to make sure we are covering all the aspect. One more thing to mention here in the logicapp. It's good that logicapp provides a variety of scenarios to cover, wherein you can define your integration logic, workflows, you have number of connectors and all those good things. But you, while designing your workflow as an architect and choosing such wonderful services for your business implementation, you need to be very careful with the purpose of each and every services. For example, logic apps are good to perform a short period or short messaging or workflow implementation, but it's not there to perform a heavy lifted job. For example, a logic app can read a file or can read uh, a file from a virtual machine, or can read an event, let's say event from a folder or FTP location. Let's say I have a FTP location wherein if somebody drops a file, my logic app is listening to that particular folder. If somebody read and write a file onto the folder, my logic app is reading the entire folder location, or the file which is being added to that particular FTP location. In that case, let's say if you are reading a path of that particular logic, that particular FTP file location, reading a file is just reading a text information. That's good, and there's no harm with that, and that is why it is meant to. But if you have a logic wherein you implemented a logic app for reading a file, or which could be a file of, let's say, 100 MB, 200 MB, or maybe a GB of word size of file, if you want to read a file from FTP location, then you are not doing a good job with your architecture. When you are reading, you are expecting your logic app to read a few hundred MBs of file or GBs of file to be read from this particular location, and then perform your activity, the rest of the workflow. So you need to be very careful what is the purpose of the services and which is the best business case scenario you can use a particular service. I hope that was useful. Now let's move back to the back to our demo. We have created successfully the logicapp, and now I'm going to trigger an event, and which is sending an event to event source now to my topic. Basically, let's check that out. If the top, what do we have in the topic? So it seems like the event has been sent successfully. I'll double check on the logicapp. I forgot to check it out, what exactly the information it has been sent. Now you can see it has sent some information with some data which we have decorated. This is the data ID and the number. Now event has been sent to the event topic from the logicapp, but the implementation is halfway through because nobody is listening to that particular event at the moment. So what should we do now? Because our implementation is just halfway through. So let's create a subscription or a subscription which will send an event from the event grid to some subscriber who is interested in this particular event. So I'm going to call it as a subscriber you can choose a different type of event handler, and you can see the different type of endpoint. You can send the event to Azure Function, as I mentioned earlier, webhook, storage queue, event hub, and all. Webhook is the kind of a general function which is available to which is capable to send an event to any type of HTTP or HTTPS endpoint. So if you have the HTTP or HTTP endpoint, any application should be able to subscribe to the event from this event topic. So basically, to create a subscription, I need a HTTP endpoint, and for that I'm going to take help of another logicapp. So let's create a logicapp quickly. So this time I'm creating a listener logicapp. So we are creating a workflow wherein one logicapp is subscribing, or source logicapp is sending the information to the event hub, event grid topic, and then here in this case what we are doing is we are receiving that particular event. So this time, to get the HTTP endpoint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it so that it will generate a HTTP URL. This is the URL which I was looking for. I'll copy that. I've copied the URL from my logicapp, and then I'll use it here. As you can see, a green tick box is marked which confirms that the URL is correct. There is no problem with that. If your URL is not correct, it will not allow you to create a subscription. It will fail. So you need to make sure you are passing on the correct and appropriate URL. So now we have set up the event grid with a subscriber, and subscriber is exposed to a webhook, and webhook is basically listened by a logicapp. So let's go back to our source logicapp, event source logicapp, which is sending the information to logicapp to event grid. Pardon me. This time you can see I've sent the event at 3 p.m. Now if I go back to the logicapp, the second logicapp, basically listener one, I should have something available here. As you can see, the information I've instantly received here from the logicapp. I'm expecting the same information which has been sent from here. So let's check what has been sent here. So this is the source. So the information which is sent from the source is number 56, and I'm going to check if I have the 56 as well. So you can see I have received the same information from source to destination. For this demonstration, just to save the time, I've used source and destination both as in logicapp, but you can go ahead and create your choice of source and destination. For example, one use case could be you can have the HTTP type of functions, Azure function, which listens to any HTTP event. Somebody invokes your function, pass on this and the data, you act on that particular data and pass on the information to event source. And once the event data is received at the event source, you can then pass on the event data to multiple subscriber. And then one of the subscriber, let's say, could be the logicapp, and logicapp would be able to help you to perform the rest of the integration for you. One thing to tell you here is, as I have one subscription listed here, a similar event can be subscribed to multiple subscription as well. So there is no problem at all. You can have the multiple subscription, and that's the reason you have the filtration option over there. So if you've seen the filter option on while creating a subscription, that's the reason for that, because if you want to filter out a topic based on the different condition, so that the same event is not going to be processed by the different subscriber, so you can have the filtration available here. So I hope you get the idea about these different serverless programming technologies, and you would be able to use in your use cases. The best thing I like about the logicapp and Azure Functions and the other technologies like eventgrid or service bus, even let's say service bus as well, you don't need to pay for anything apart from the use case or the number of time you are using these services. You don't need to pay for creating the resources or provisioning any of these type of resources. It's just that amount of time you use, or the number of time you use these services, for that period of time you can you need to pay for that, and that is going to be really cheap. So it's truly serverless and the best scenario for platform as a service case. Before I move on, I would like to tell you something about the logicapp, which I forgot it. So as I mentioned earlier, that in the logicapp, by default the logicapps are invoked and accessible publicly. It is invoked from the public endpoint to your environment. So there might be a use case, or somebody may ask you, what if I want to restrict a logicapp to a private endpoint? What do I need to do? So for example, you restrict your storage account to your virtual network. You apply the restriction on your Azure function or app services through the app service environment. So do we have anything like that in the logicapp? So the answer is yes. So you have the integrated service environment, ISE, for logicapp, which is recently introduced last year, I guess, and that you can leverage, wherein what it is going to do is it will give you a dedicated environment wherein your logicapp is going to be hosted, and then you would have the full control on your logicapp, wherein you can integrate your virtual private network to your logicapp network or your IEC environment. In that case, your logicapp will not be able to it will not be a case wherein your logicapp are basically invoking from the public endpoint. So the use case which I have described, let's say your logicapp wants to connect to your database which is on the private virtual network, or protected with private virtual network, or you want your logicapp want to connect to the event source or storage account or any service which is restricted to the private network, then in that case logicapp IAC environment is going to helpful. But again, if you are going to use this kind of a services for with the like this kind of a feature, such as an integrated environment or app service environment in case of app services, then obviously these kind of a feature gives you the dedicated and isolated features, list of features, but it comes with the heavy cost. So it depends what your client is demanding for. So based on that, you can go ahead and choose the type of service. I hope the discussion and the implementation was helpful for you. If you have any suggestion, please let me know. I will try to cover. Thanks for watching it.